Hello, and welcome to another episode of Purple Ponderings with Pankaj, Metaverse Edition. Today we have as our guest Aishwary Gupta from Polygon Technology. Aishwary, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. My first question to you is if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your role, what is it that you do at Polygon? And also, one thing about you that most of the listeners may not know about you.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Pankaj, for hosting me here. If I talk about myself and if I talk about my role at Polygon, so currently I handle two roles at Polygon. One is the DeFi Chief of Staff, which means I work with the DeFi head, and with him I try to manage the whole DeFi team. That is the first role that I do. The second one is managing all the payments and all the fintech integrations that are happening with Polygon. So if you look at WordPay, if you look at Robinhood and all those integrations, so that's where I play a small part. So this is basically about my role at Polygon. If you talk about what one thing that probably readers might not know about me is like maybe I'm someone who has been into crypto or who has come into crypto not because of like getting into Bitcoin or getting into like buying Ethereum at $88 or something like that. My entry has been from a corporate side where I was trying to find out a way to move cross-border payments on blockchain. So that's where like I think I started my journey. Started with creating a solution for cross-border payments for one of the MNCs I used to work for. So that's the way I got into crypto. Pretty much different from a lot more people who have been into crypto.
Got it, got it, got it. That's certainly very interesting how you got into the whole Web3 space. I'm going to stay there a little bit and just talk a little bit into. I mean, you shared how you got into the cross-border payments as the way to get in. I guess something about that intrigued you. So I'd like to just understand what that was that made you sort of be curious about this area, and also just talk a little bit about what were you doing before, just so that people have a perspective of where were you coming in from.
Absolutely. So I have been a finance guy. I am a chartered accountant, which is like a CPA in US. Then after that, I did my executive education from IIM Calcutta, which is one of the top colleges in India, probably. So that is something which is my educational background. Then I come from an audit background. So I used to work with PwC in the audit field. Then I chose to get into finance, specifically in Treasury. So if you look at Treasury, that is where I actually went ahead. And Treasury, when you talk about specifically Treasury, the thing that we were handling in one of the companies, which is American Express, was something where I wanted to go out and I wanted to talk about, or I wanted to find out a way in which we can move funds faster. So obviously everyone has heard about Swift network and how it works. And that was not like the moving point. So often in corporates, you actually have to go out for a group dinner or a group lunch or play something out there. And what my team used to do was they used to always carry a laptop because across the world, you don't know which market is opening at what time. And that was the biggest pain point I used to feel within my team. And that's where like I started looking for solutions, what could be there. And I think American Express was one of the first investors in XRP. So being there as one of the first investors in XRP, so we did have a blockchain department at that point of time. And this is something like 2018. So 2018, 2019. So yeah, we had it. So I just tried to go out, talk to the team, which was already building it. So we tried to create the first solution out there for US and UK merchants to move funds across within very small period of time, and of course charging a premium. So that's where the first solution using XRP, not XRP tokens, but XRP has three products at that point in time. So one of the products we use. So that's where my journey started, and that's where it got intriguing for me that blockchains can do a lot of things. And so that's where I started learning about it on my own self. Then I did a lot of internships at multiple places, and I don't know, I also lost count on how many places I did it. But then full time I went in once, like post COVID, because at that point of time, American Express's revenue tanked for like 83%. So all the innovations and everything stopped. So that's where I went full time in crypto. I joined an Indian exchange, which was called as Zepe. There I used to manage the treasury. I used to bring yields from the DeFi. And also, like at that point of time, I launched my courses on blockchain. So I think I was the first one in India to launch a DeFi course. So that's something where a lot of people started connecting with me because they did not understand anything about DeFi. And I used to post about airdrops as well. So just telling them, okay, you know what, I got an ENS airdrop worth 4.5 lakh rupees in my account. And people like, what? That's like what we earn in 5 months. So that's something which I think a lot of people got intrigued into as well. And so I've taught more than 20,000 people now. And then I went into a Swiss bank called Seba. I used to be a researcher and we used to manage $100 million fund. So how much investment and everything, I think we got somewhere around 800% plus returns on that fund. So that was something which was there. And then I think I got invited from someone at Polygon to join Polygon. And from there, I've been here for almost one and a half year. And that's the journey I have been here.
Awesome. Awesome. That's a very wide ranging journey. And I think one of the things that stuck with me, with your background was how many different roles you have been able to play, right? Hats that you've been able to wear in the short career that you've had so far. So it's been very, very impressive. So there's two aspects to your job, as you mentioned, right? And my first question to you is related to DeFi, right? So you mentioned that you were doing a lot of these courses, which was a new thing in India, but to help people understand, right? The layman, as we call the Web 2 world or even Web 1 world, to understand really what Web 3 is all about, what blockchain is all about, what DeFi is all about. And our audience is also actually a combination of kind of the old school insurance, insurtech, so more tech savvy people, but still Web 1, Web 2 centric people. For those of the people who are out there who still don't understand, because they hear these words, right? DeFi, CeFi, and these are all acronyms, and to the degens that makes a lot of sense, but outside of that, it doesn't. How would you very, in easy English, if I could ask you to define DeFi, right, and explain DeFi to those people, what would you say?
I think if you look at the finance industry, this double accounting system that is there, that was invented in 1500s. Then if you look at the overall finance, the way it has evolved, I think almost more than 250 years, and there has been no innovation in finance. And that's where what has happened is, even with so many rules, so many regulations, still it is not something which is working out. You see a lot of papers coming out, like FINMA leak happened, FinCEN leak happened, and everything like that, where even with the laws and regulations and everything, the finance industry is still not transparent. And that is where what happens is ultimately the retail has to suffer, because they're the last ones to know. And people who already know, people who already have done that, they already get an exit. So that is where I think that is one loophole, which is like you don't have the transparency. The second loophole is basically when you are today. So I think there was a paper written by Nick Szabso in 1992, and he named it as God's Protocol. Now, God protocol, what exactly is God here is intermediaries. So he said that, okay, we have internet, but can you do anything on the internet? The answer is no. Why? Because unless you have an intermediary on the internet, you cannot do anything. So he termed those intermediaries as God. So today, if I want to do a transaction online, the problem is I need a bank account, I need a payment provider, I need XYZ intermediaries in between. And okay, that's fine. But every time you increase an intermediary in between, first of all, it increases the time. And second after the time, it also increases your cost. So that is another problem which is out there. And then like the third problem which is there, internet promised like equality to all, but has internet delivered it? I mean, everyone who's listening to this can say no, because it got centralized to 5-6 people or 5-6 parties. And that's basically where you went out and you said that, okay, that's something where that got centralized. And whether everyone is connected to the financial system, the answer is no. If you look at the world population, which is somewhere around 1.3 billion or 2 billion people, which still are bereft of financial systems. And why? The answer is the infrastructure is not there. But out of these 2 billion people, somewhere around 1.7 billion people do have internet, do have mobile phones. So that's where DeFi comes into the picture. So what DeFi does is, DeFi is clubbing all these things. DeFi is a way in which you get a transparent, more efficient, cheaper way to do finance, or to take care of all the finances that you do on chain. And the beauty about this is, very simply put, talk about FinCEN leak. I think that was 2 years back. Is there any name that got to pay a price or a fine out of it? The answer is no. You see FTX did not happen like more than 2 months ago, or I think it was just 1 month ago. But today we have most of the facts, because it was on chain. It's in the public, it's on Twitter, it's everything is that transparent and is that quick. So I think that's where DeFi comes into the picture. It brings you the efficiencies and everything which was required. And this is the only, I think, one sector which stood strong today. And that is like, if you just like, a lot of people say, okay, what is DeFi? Have you seen any mainstream adoption? Have you seen anything like that? So quickly, just if I want to put it out, I can just share 3 examples. The first one is, I mean, everyone has gone through those when the prices were crashing, and when the prices were crashing, they're logging into the centralized systems, exchanges, and they all are also crashing out. So you're not able to sell crypto and everything like that. Same day, I think when I, at that point of time, I was working with one of the companies that I told you, and I moved somewhere around $250 million on that day on DeFi. Flawless. There was no problem moving those funds. So that's the point. So that's where the first efficiency comes in. The second is, if you look at the banking sector, I can talk about India, the biggest bank of India, State Bank of India. So State Bank of India has somewhere around 4.2 million, 425,000 customers out there, employees, sorry, 425,000 employees out there. And if you look at the total amount of deposits that they have in the bank account, it's somewhere around $450 million. So even if I put like 10% of these people who are just taking out talking about this, which means like somewhere around you can say 25,000 or 40,000 people are just accepting deposits and getting there. I compare it with Aave, less than 50 people. At that peak, they were managing somewhere around $40 billion worth of assets. So that's where adoption is happening. And the third one is like, if you look at how much money being moved out there. So I think last year till December 2020, December 2022, Ethereum moved more than $6 trillion in that year. So that's the amount of money also being moved. So that's where I can say that, okay, DeFi is not just niche, it is actually getting the mainstream attention that is happening now.
Yeah. No, I think those examples are really very, very relevant. One thing that I would point out to the first example that you mentioned, a lot of the people, we talk about FTX, but FTX is not DeFi, right? As we know, FTX is CeFi. It's a centralized exchange. There's no difference between, FTX and what it did and the way it did versus like a traditional, except that this was all on crypto. And everything that you say is valid. Actually, to me, might be one of the minority, but I feel that examples like FTX and others that are happening or are likely to happen is kind of a purge that needed to happen, so that there are some more regulations that come in, especially for some of the centralized areas that still exist within the Web3 world. And yes, this is a great case study for all the DeFi exchanges as well, right? They're all working well. The volume and momentum has gone there. But of course, right now, there's a broad brush that has unfortunately come in. And we'll talk about that a little bit in terms of the impact of that, for this year. But I just wanted to clarify for those people that, FTX, yes, the names are out there, unlike other areas. I was actually, I don't know what you feel about it. There was this settlement that happened with SEC and Kim Kardashian, right? So she had essentially taken some money from someone, and then she had promoted them without disclosing that she had taken some money. She had to settle. Now that influencer marketing has been happening forever in the real world, but it has never been caught, right? Because it was never needed to be disclosed. But just because this time it was, in the Web3 space. There was transparency, and it came out, and it became obvious that here's was something that has happened. So to your point, I would agree that while bad actors exist in all kinds of markets and worlds, because of the improved transparency in the Web3 space, it's not easier to hide, right? You are going to come out with your actions being out there. One question that rises in the minds of a lot of people, is in the examples that you mentioned, especially if you look at, even 20 years ago when internet just came in and we just started doing e-commerce transactions, was this whole aspect of security, right? So a lot of the people, when they read all these bad press, they don't get it, right? You mentioned some very impressive data points, right? The amount of money that's moving in, which is at a faster pace than ever, by these third parties that have come up very, very recently, more transparent. And yet those examples are not what people remember, right? They will all see the scams, the pump and dump, and sort of the rug pulls that are happening in the industry. And so security becomes really, really important. I just wanted to get your thoughts on, because especially as someone, you mentioned the other part of your work is related to payments and fintech, and security is very, very important, right? To how do you ensure that what's going to happen is really going to happen. So what's your perspective on, from a security standpoint, how important is that? Where are we in that journey in the Web3 space?
I think when there's a new technology that comes into the picture, so security is something which is definitely very important. But like when you look at blockchains and when you look at the way they are evolving right now, they're still very early. Now, that being said, what happens is, like, if you go to the Web2 world, now you have standardization. You have standardized codes which you can pick up when you're going out and building a website. You have standardized codes when you can go out and build a huge amount of data and everything out there. Now, when you have those standards out there, and when you have those codes which are running those behind the scenes, at that point of time, because they're closed, also those codes don't even come out. So if their codes are not public, even if there are flaws, nobody knows about it. So that's one, which is like, if you look at the way everything evolves, if you look at the way internet also evolved, there is a huge amount of risk that is definitely involved in Web3. Why? Simply because the technology is way new. There's no standard. So if you look at Ethereum, if you look at EIPs, which is Ethereum Improvement Proposals, they're everywhere. There's so many proposals coming in. There are so many proposals getting implemented and everything like that. And hence there is no standards. Why? Because it will take a lot of time to get those standards, because the technology is still evolving. So that is one of the biggest reasons, I would say, why like security in Web3 is still very, very early. And that is why I think even like if you're getting into DeFi, I mean, I will share one example, which is like, I don't know who that person is, but I think there was a TikTok story that was out there. So there was this guy who went out and purchased his house. The house was worth like 750K. He gave out like 250K as upfront, and he deposited to 500,000 in USD, because that was giving him a 20% return. And he was just posting about it, saying, I bought a 750K house at 250K because now every EMI that I have to pay is going to come from the interest of USD. So now, okay, cool, you're getting a 20% and you feel that that's something which is sustainable. I won't say anything on that, but putting all the money in one platform just because it is giving you a good return. So that's where I would say the risk appetite is something that people have to consider when they're coming into Web3. So just concluding on all those points, I would say the security is something which is paramount. Where it is, I would say, still not that mature. And hence, if you are investing into Web3, take a proper risk appetite check. The amount that you can only lose, I would say, if you want to get into it, do it. The best way to understand anything before investment is to use it, I would say. A lot of people say, like, I mean, this question comes in at Polygon a lot, like, how do we learn everything in DeFi? And I think every time this question comes up, we always go out and say, do things in DeFi. You cannot learn anything unless you run those platforms. You cannot learn, I can give you my courses, that would not help. Why? Because that is education. But until unless you try that out, you won't learn it. So yeah, so security is early. There's a huge amount of risk. Insurance platforms are still there on Web3. So if you are putting out that kind of a money, do take an insurance as well.
Yeah. And that's I can't, I hate to not take that, lead in and say that's exactly what Purple Ant is working on the insurance side, because we think that this is early, but like you said, there are different kinds of risks that are present, and once there is risk, there is obviously opportunities to manage the risk, and insurance is one way to manage the risk, right? There's obviously other aspects as well, and that's what we are working on. One question that comes up a lot for me, in this whole conversation with especially Web2 people, and my own observation is that Web3 is all about transparency, Web3 is all about speed, Web3 is about equality, non-discrimination, uh, and it's also anonymity, right? So people don't want to be tracked, they don't want to be like, because that's how a lot of the companies, like you mentioned, like in the whole Web2 world, the monetization happened by a few people, right? Few companies, few large companies, and they were able to do that because they could track a lot of the actions and movement. So in the Web3, how do you reconcile these two, the need to be, if we have to bring security and transparency, we need to know who you are, right? If you're doing a transaction, versus this need to, okay, if you have to give you equality, you should be allowed to have the liberty to not disclose who you are, right? So how do you reconcile these two aspects?
I mean, had you asked me this 2 years back, I probably wouldn't have the answer, but today I do have it. The answer is basically using decentralized identification systems. So let's say there's a product called Polygon ID that we have. And I'll give you an example to make you understand how that works. So simply put, let's say I want to go out and I want to just put out a way in which I want to transact online. So let's say there is a party X which is a protocol. And this protocol actually wants to go out, follow all the rules and regulations of OPAC and everything like that. So what they can do is basically, they can simply go out and they can talk to a KYC provider. And with that KYC provider, they can, on top of that KYC provider, put Polygon ID. Now, when you put Polygon ID there, what Polygon ID does is, it takes all your KYC data from the KYC provider, puts that data on chain, and deletes all the data input that you have given. So Polygon ID does not have your maybe passport or anything, social security, printouts and everything like that, but it does have the data. Now, when this comes out as a data point there, now let's say this X protocol, if I am a user and I want to go out and I want to do, let's say it's a trading platform and I want to trade on it. So on chain, I have just got an identification number. So I'm anonymous. Nobody knows who I am, right? And I can go out and do whatever I want to do there. Let's say I am in a sanctioned country, and that protocol, which is the X protocol, that protocol has built out this condition that if someone is, his IP is being tracked from this particular area, they should not be able to trade. So what is happening there is, based on that IP, what will happen is, if I am in that area, this ID will have this condition inbuilt in it, and it will track. If I'm coming out from that area, it will not let me trade. Again, it has still not divulged out who I am, but it has stopped me from actually going out and doing that transaction. So this way, what happens is, like, you are still able to, in a decentralized world, while being an anonymous, are able to go out and do what you could do with your ID being disclosed. Now, let's say if on the regulator side, if they want to track someone, they cannot track it from Polygon ID, but from that ID, they can go to the KYC provider and find out who that person is. Like, that's where regulation is important. So that is one such use case where you're still maintaining all that anonymity, you're still maintaining all those kinds of things there. And while you're maintaining that, you're still able to go out and comply with the rules and regulations which are important. So that is one example. And that could be like, let's say today, when one of the other use case could be like today, if you're going on to a bar and you have to prove that you are or you have attained a certain amount of age. So at that point of time, today what happens is you have to put out your identification card, or when you go to a restaurant and you have a hotel room booked, you go out and give your printouts and everything out there. So that is where what happens is, here the problem is, we are giving out our identities. We are handing out our identities. Now with Polygon ID, what you can do is you can just convert it into a yes or a no. I am going into a bar. The bar says you have to be 21 years of age or not. So when I'm entering the bar, what they can do is they can ping my Polygon ID to check if I'm 21 plus or not. Answer will come as a yes or a no. So even they don't know what my age is. They just know that I fulfilled the criteria and I can move on. So that is where I think slowly and steadily that word is coming at par of security as well as identification and still being anonymous.
Yeah. No, that I think is a really, really good use case, and it's something which we ourselves are also looking into. So I'll follow up with you on that. I think there's a very important element, because you're basically not storing the data, but you're getting the answers, and you can reach out and get the data, like you said, from the KYC provider, who's obviously going to have that information. Because fraud prevention is important, and when you are suspecting that a fraud has happened, you will need to validate and verify, and that's where that aspect becomes important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's good to know. So as a recent Polygon ecosystem provider, I guess we can also benefit from this product. And there's obviously many products like these at Polygon, right? So while we are on this topic of Polygon, why don't you? I mean, people know of Polygon as a block-to-chain, but I just think that you guys are in so many different areas, doing so many things especially with a lot of business or corporate onboarding, not just consumer onboarding. Maybe if you can take a couple of minutes and just share, kind of a high-level view of what are all the offerings, and what is Polygon all about? What is the philosophy and vision?
I think absolutely. So in one line, if I want to say what is Polygon, so Polygon is a way in which you can scale Ethereum. Now, when you're scaling Ethereum, one of the things that we have to understand is when you go to a corporate and when you go to a business, there are different types of businesses. There are different ways in which those businesses are run. So you cannot just go to a particular place and say, hey, listen, this is my blockchain, and you have to mold your business according to us. So that's where I think we have a suite of solutions. The reason why we have this is because of this only, that every business has its own needs, and every business. So for example, if someone wants to go out and have a shared chain, a public chain, you have the Polygon POS chain, where which is one of the most used product out there. And it has tens of thousands of applications running on it. And everything happening there. On an average, we have somewhere around 4 to 5 million transactions happening on a daily basis. And on a weekly basis, you have somewhere around 2.5 to 3 million user base, which is active. So that is the Polygon POS chain. Now, second is basically where you have SuperNets, or you can call it Polygon Edge. So on Polygon Edge, it's an SDK to make your own blockchain, which means that, let's say you have a huge number of user base, and you want to have your own chain. For corporates, this is something which is very handy. Why? Because they want to have their own chains. They want to run their businesses on their own chain. They do not want to get into a public chain, disclose all the data and everything out there. So this is something where they can actually go out. This is where they can actually go and run their own chain. So that is where Polygon SuperNets comes in. This is where we have a dedicated white glove service out there for enterprises to actually go out and do that. An example could be Nubank, which is 55 million user base, and they wanted to launch a loyalty program for their customers, and so that they are building on SuperNets. So that's the second example. That's the second product. The third one is Polygon ID, which I already talked about, which is an identification system. Then we have zero knowledge proof. There are 3 solutions which are being built on zero knowledge proof. Now, what is zero knowledge proof? Let me explain it in a very simple manner. Let's say I and you, Pankaj, we are standing outside a cave, and that cave has a door inside it, which is locked. And there's something called as a cave door analogy. Now here what we, while standing outside the cave, let's say I know the password of the gate. So there are two ways in which I can make you believe that I know the password. One is I take you along with me. I open the door in front of you. You see the password, and we come out from the other side. That's where the current state of blockchains is, which is pseudonymous, which means that, okay, unless you don't disclose a certain trait, it is anonymous. For example, I can just go out and say my address name is Ashwary.eth. So now you know that this is Ashwary.eth is my address. So you can just go to Etherscan and see my address. You can see what are the transactions that I've done and everything like that. So it was pseudo-anonymous until the time I told you what my address is. Now, with zero knowledge proof, what happens is we go back to the cave. We're standing outside the cave. I want to tell you I know the password. What I do is I make you stand outside the cave. I go inside the cave, unlock the door, and come from the other side. Right? Now, when we do that, what happens is at this point of time, I've not told you what the password was. But what I've done is I've proved to you that I know the password. So this is also another way in which I can make you believe that I know the password instead of telling you what the password is. So that is zero knowledge, where you have not divulged the knowledge, but still made someone else believe that the information that I'm giving is true. And that's where we have Polygon Zero, Polygon Maiden, and all ZK, all these three chains that we have. So this is where we are going out, we are adopting various ways in which we are actually going and solving this. So that's another way, or that's another solution that is out there. So once if you talk about these solutions, the biggest point about these solutions is they're going to be live very soon. Now, which means that you can actually go out, do all the transactions on chain, and you don't have to worry about telling everyone what you're doing on chain. So that's something which is like the zero knowledge solutions out there. Then we're also working on one more solution, which is, so when you go out and process transactions on chain, there are multiple facets to that transaction. There is data processing, there is computation and everything like that. And now while you do that, what happens is, due to so many things being done at the same point of time, the computing power that is required is high, which makes blockchain slow. So we're trying to work on a data solution where you can actually go out and process all this data, which is being put on chain in a different chain altogether, which means you can still get even faster. So that's where I think the Polygon suite of solutions is out there. We have 7 solutions. I think that's where we have all those things right now.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I think Polygon is, of course, one of the reasons why we were excited about Polygon was also because not just the applicability and coming up with use cases that is going to help consumers and businesses have a more frictionless experience onboarding onto Web3. But also, I think the other aspect that I wanted to get into is partnerships and ecosystem. There are a lot of chains obviously out there, and they're all talking about partnerships and developing the ecosystem. But I feel like Polygon has done something very different there, right? Somehow they've been able to crack that nut better than anybody else. And since you also have, you look after partnerships and fintech areas, it says integrations as well. Wanted to just get your thoughts on that aspect. Why is that, first of all, important for Web3, right? This open ecosystem and this kind of having more partners versus doing it all yourself philosophy. And then secondly, how is Polygon doing it differently?
I think there are two things that I want to mention here. The first one is when you're actually going out and building a product. At the end today, when we go out and use our banking system, nobody cares about what is running that banking system, correct? So that's the first thing which I want to mention. So if you're actually going out and if you're actually going and building a solution out there, you have to make it flawless, and you have to understand the needs of your client. Like I said, like you cannot just go to every client and say, okay, we have the solution and you have to mold yourself like this. So that is, I think, the first one, where we have the suite of solutions out there. And because of the suite of solution, what happens is, based on the mind share that we go out and work with these teams in, we bring in a lot of value for these customers. So our pitch is never that, okay, if you deploy on Polygon, we probably will give you like 10 million or 100 million or $5 billion, something like that. What we actually are talking about is how we can help these partners to increase their business share, to increase their revenues, to increase the way they're adopting things, to reduce the pain points that they have today, right? So if you look at, like, for example, if you look at loyalty, a lot of money is spent on loyalty, but today also there is no tool that can actually go out and tell you how much did a particular campaign get you benefited. I've seen that in American Express as well. So that's the first thing. We actually go out and we do not actually want to go out and say, okay, you just build on it for the sake of building. But we actually go out and we actually help those clients to understand what is important and how their business can thrive on this. So I think that is something, the first one. Then that post this, I think the second one is basically the way in which this experience is for the people. Like if you look at Trump NFT, I mean, we did not onboard Trump, just giving you an example. So if you look at Trump NFT, the way in which you were able to buy those NFTs, right, was flawless. I mean, you just went out and through your debit card, you were owning an NFT. You just made a payment on a debit or a credit card and you got an NFT. And the good part about this is slowly and steadily what is happening is through all these things that we're doing, we're bringing the distribution. So today, if you look at a lot of businesses, if you look at, let's say, maybe payment providers, do you feel that there are just 5 or 6 payment providers? The answer is no, there are hundreds of them. But the reason why there are only 2-3 names that we know is basically because these people have been able to go out and get the distribution. They have got the partnerships and everything. So with that in mind, so today what is happening is based on all these partnerships that we've already secured, a lot of distribution is something that has come up. And everyone, in order to be successful, they need distribution. An app which is flawless but has 0 users versus an app maybe which has a little bit flaws or no, but has 100K active users. The latter will always be at an edge, I would say. So I think these two are the major things that we are focusing on when we're talking to a lot of partners and onboarding them.
Got it. Excellent. My last question on this in this area is where we are in the journey of the whole Web3. Obviously last year we saw, I mean, there was a whole trajectory that was happening, especially in the last 2 years. I guess everything was taking off like a rocket, and then the rocket has gotten a little bit, it has to come back into the atmosphere again. What do you think needs to happen or change in the next few months for things to get back into kind of a the same trajectory, more mass adoption, more people onboarding into Web3, and sort of the whole ecosystem improving, right, versus where it is today? What do you say?
I think I can give 2 answers to this. One is a funny one, which is more centralized exchanges failing, or more centralized places failing out there, so that people ultimately realize that their money is not their money when they're putting it in a centralized place. A more descriptive answer could be like 2 things. One is like the way regulations are coming in and the way the media handles those. So if I take example of India today, like most of the pieces that are written out by so-called blockchain experts, they have a very basic understanding missing. So if there is something called FTX news which is coming in India, so the news is not like a centralized exchange, a centralized body has failed again. News is crypto is dead. FTX took away everyone's money. So I mean, the way the regulations have to be created, and I think slowly and steadily, where a lot of governments are now actively participating in it, which is way better than 2018-19, where they would just not even open their doors to talk. So yeah, that is one thing. So better regulations and more clear regulations. Maybe it's a ban, maybe it's not, whatever, but you have to clearly communicate that. And then how the media takes it for the communication, because there are enough minds. I won't say that you need more Web2 minds to come in to make Web3 successful. and we have enough minds, more minds are always welcome. But the major thing is these two, and these two only, I think.
Yeah, I think you bring up an important point, which is education, right? So I think we talked about how what's happening with Celsius, Luna, or FTX. People have to understand what those are, what they're doing. When you look at a rug pull, like what really has happened, and stop using that as a broad brush to say anybody and everybody who's coming out with a NFT project or an metaverse project and token launch is essentially waiting to just collect the money and run away. I think education is really critical, especially even for and I think I feel like it's on the Web3 people who are already here to simplify it, right? I've seen a lot of us use a lot of jargon when we talk to each other, and if you just put yourself out like as a person who's observing that conversation, it would be in a new language, right, that nobody can understand. So I think simplification of what is happening is a responsibility that we have, so that way it's clearer to everybody within Web3 and outside as to what exactly is happening, why it's happening. And you're right, media is really important these days. People are getting the news from everywhere, including Twitter, WhatsApp, and YouTubes of the world, and who's saying what, and how many number of followers they have makes a definitely difference. So, so this is great, Ashwari. I think this was a great leg of our conversation. I usually, we've taken a good amount of time, but this is good because this is helpful and insightful content for the listeners. I want to get to the next stage now, which is more about you. And so I want the viewers to also understand, what you're all about. So my next question to you is, can you tell us a little bit about your, proudest achievement and the biggest learning you've had so far in your life?
I think one of the as I'm not like someone who is very different. I think being someone who is 29, the biggest achievement for me is to ensure that my family is well taken care of. I would say, so that could be like one of the biggest achievement, ensuring that everyone is everyone in my family is well taken care of. Yeah, my father is there and everyone is there, but like that's one of the biggest and the most proud feeling for me, where I have been able to go out and I've been able to provide that kind of living that I always expect me living out there. So that is, I think, one of the most proud thing. Learning, I think I have a lot of them. Being just 29 and experimenting, I don't know how much I have huge amount of learnings, I would say. And one thing that I've also learned in my short span of corporate experience, 7-8 years of that, is basically there are two ways to learn. The first one is to fail and learn, which I have done ample of times. But what I've also done is I've taken care of a lot of mentors. I've taken a lot of mentors and who actually have told me about how they have failed, and I've tried to avoid that. So I think this is one of the ways in which my journey reduces that amount of failures that probably I would have made if I did not have mentors. So one of the biggest failures I could say here, that what I've been doing is I'm a two-time I would say a two-time failed entrepreneur. So that's something which is there. I think the first startup that I had was of crowdfunding, and equity crowdfunding was something that I wanted to do in India. Law did not allow me to do that. So I waited for 6 months, had to close that down. The second one was basically into education itself, but being not a techie, I think that is where one place I fail out. Building a product, yeah, getting an idea, yeah, having a business, you can say, way to get that product out, yes, definitely. But that's where I think this is something which is there, and I still want to be an entrepreneur. I still want to go out and I still want to be someone who actually has built out a product and proudly can say that, okay, I actually built something out.
Got it. Excellent. Uh, my next question for you is, Ashwari, in this world where there's so many new updates on a daily basis, and the pace of, I guess, concepts and new ideas and what's happening all around is happening. How do you keep yourself up to date with what is happening?
I think for us, it is pretty simple because we are connected to a lot of protocols. So whatever updates come in, they usually post it in the group and say, "Hey, here's a new update. Can you help us with the marketing support and everything like that?" So for us, it is something which is very quick, I would say. So we get the first-hand information on that point. But if I look at from a general perspective, the best way to go out and know about is, I think, still the fastest way is Twitter. There are multiple apps that have been made out which actually go out and they just find out and secure information from everywhere, and they just put out there. So I think Coin Market Cap is one which keeps on updating everything. Coin Gecko is there. There is Crypto Panic. So this is an application which aggregates all that data from various places, and it will give you real-time updates of what is happening on multiple social media. And then if you're too deep into tech and you want to have the like real deep understandings, Reddit is a place. Reddit is where you can actually get into those threads. You can still understand how those things work, mature. So that's I think these are the places where you can get a lot of information. If you move to alpha, like I want to know firsthand what is happening, Discords are the place. Like a lot of the alphas go around in the Discords because a lot of people talk on Discords because Discord is something which techies love.
Yes, yes. And I would echo your point on the lack of techiness. I'm myself someone who is not a techie, and I've, experienced that firsthand in terms of the downside of not being able to do that. So thanks for all those areas. I will definitely check out Crypto Panic. The others I'd of course heard and read about, but that's a new one for me also. Uh, all right. So the last segment I'm going to ask you is to tell me your favorite person in each of these fields, and why is it, and who is that favorite person for you in those fields, and why. So the first one is a sports icon.
I think in sports, I've been idolizing a lot Messi. I've seen how he works, and I think I idolize him because of the way I've seen him on the field, which is like you don't have to be like running around everywhere. You just have to save your energy and be effective in that 15% of the time when actually it matters.
Yeah, that's, and I think everybody else has looked at that as well, right? And the FIFA Cup was a good example where he just showed the world how to do it. Really. Next
Absolutely.
one is a business leader.
I think as a business leader, I see my Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. Why I have in my so one of the places where before all my corporate experience, I was a little bit in politics. I worked with him a little bit, not directly but indirectly in many ways, in a lot of campaigns and everything. And the way he thinks, I think that is one of the most important thing that people don't realize about it. The way how to run a country. I mean, there are a lot of ups, downs, there are a lot of bad decisions. I know. But as a leader, when you go out upfront and you make a decision, at least you're making those decisions. That is important. You're not staying behind because you feel my bad decision could end my career. So I think that's where I think as someone who is a leader, I recognize that.
That's interesting because my next one was political leader that you admire. I don't know if Mr. Modi is a businessman, then who would you say is a political leader?
I don't know, but like politics, I don't know who I should idolize per se, but like if you read My Experiments with Truth by Mahatma Gandhi, you would idolize him.
Yeah, that's a good book. That's a good book for sure. All right. And the last one is a historical figure that you would want to be.
A historical figure. I don't have an answer for that, probably. I don't want to be like anyone, to be honest.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, with that, we come to an end to this amazing conversation, Ashwary. It was very, very, deep and insightful. Any final words from your side for our listeners before we wrap up?
I think just one line, if you're into Web3, don't listen to people, don't follow crypto Twitter accounts which have 500K, 600K followers. but rather go and use those applications, protocols, and see what those efficiencies are there before like concluding, okay, this works or this doesn't.
Excellent, excellent. Well, on that words of wisdom, we conclude this episode. Thank you so much again, Ashwary, for being here, sharing some time. And we'll be back very soon with another episode and with an amazing guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me here.